Hey guys, it's Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing a service project again on a classic Penn conventional reel here. So we're talking about the Super Mariner Model 49 made by Penn. Okay, this is the edition that's got this nice scenic tail plate on it here on the side. Okay, with the boats trolling around there. Okay, but this is a deep sea fishing reel meant for big game fish. A friend of mine at work says that this belongs to his friend. Asked if I could service it, so that's what we're going to do here. All right, so we're going to start, of course, with taking off the handle here. And this reel, it's in pretty good shape. It's got some of the typical pitting damage, though, which there isn't much we can do about that, but we'll certainly try to clean it up. I think we're just going to start off here with a little bit of penetrating lube here on this handle screw. But yeah, I haven't worked on one of these in a little while. And this is the reel, or a reel, I should say, where you've got your free spool lever here, with this eccentric lever here, okay, to put this into gear or into free spool. But then you've also got this lever down here, which puts it into direct drive. Okay, so you can free up your clutch and not burn up your clutch if you're fighting big game. Okay, so that's kind of a neat feature, of this reel here. These levers are actually quite hard to move, though, and it doesn't spin very freely. So it's time for a service with it. So we're gonna get this handle nut off here, and we're gonna start taking everything apart bit by bit. One little trick with taking off the handle here is you can back it off just by turning that star adjuster. Okay, looks like we've got a little bit of rust damage here. We're going to take some penetrating oil to this while we're here, and we're going to take some 4-0 steel wool here, and we're going to try to free up a little bit of that rust and corrosion off of there. Just try to make it a little less rough with some of that. This is just a mild, abrasive pad basically with that stuff, and we'll clean it up. And we'll do a little polishing in this mix too, I think, at some point here, once we get the rest of the reel apart and some of these pieces. All right, so we've got a collar in here. All right, and then we've got screws in all these positions. Being that this is a saltwater reel and it does have some corrosion, it's always a wise move to apply a little bit of penetrating oil to each one of these screw heads just to prevent any damage. I'll let that soak in just for a minute here, because I find a lot of the time, the salt spray and whatnot, it can get into all those threads, and I've actually had them break off before in there, which is never a fun thing to deal with. So take these out one by one. And, while we do this, we're going to also find out what shape the drag stack is in. Hopefully it doesn't need to be replaced, but if it does, then I might have to go digging around to see if I got some spare washers kicking around that might accommodate that. As you can see, this is a narrow spool design. And Penn made the Super Mariners, and then they also had the Master Mariners, and then I think just the Mariners. I think if I recall correctly, the Mariners were the 149s, the Super Mariners were the 49s, and the Master Mariners were 349, I believe. And then there was also a special model, I think it was the 49A, which I have actually done videos on, which is the same reel, but it's a wider spool, and they were only available for a short period of time, I think, in South Africa, from what I understand. Quite rare. those reels. Hard to find. Now make note at the bottom here, you've got 2 screws that go into the stand mount down here, and they should be shorter screws than the rest of those screws that we just took out. So you want to kind of set those off to the side and make sure that they don't get mixed up with the longer ones. Okay. And we're just going to hose all these down gently here. I can see there's a little bit of corrosion on those, so we want to make sure that that gets freed up. Okay, so we've got the business end taken apart there, and we'll pull out the spool. Yeah, this is pretty dry in here. Nothing unusual, of course. So we're going to take some penetrating oil to this first, and we're going to clean it up. Just clean off any old grease that's, dried up in there, basically. And also, a lot of the time what happens down here is you'll get some corrosion down here at the base, and I can see there's some evidence of that. And that's ultimately what happens when you don't rinse off your fishing reels with fresh water, after they get all the salt spray on them. Salt water can work really fast. So in order to prevent that kind of stuff from happening, you want to make sure that you clean those reels off right away after you get back from your fishing trip and stuff with fresh water. But I'm just going to take the 4-0 steel wool to this. This isn't going to scar the metal or anything like that. It's just a mild steel wool. We'll try to get some of that roughness out of there the best that we can. And kind of clean it up here a little bit as well. But, the plate on the inside is quite clean, so there's definitely no issues there. Now, one thing I do also want to do here while we're working on this reel, I want to loosen up these screws gently on this side, okay? And once again, we're going to apply a little bit of lube here, penetrating oil on these screws. Let that work its way in. And we're going to back off these screws just a little bit, and we're going to spray a little bit more of that in there to work its way into the threads. We want to protect those threads indefinitely, because what happens is if they get locked up in there, then you're going to start spinning these frame bars, and you're not going to be able to get it out, and you might have to drill it out or whatever. So I've had that happen before. Okay, so we're just going to gently back these out just so we can have enough clearance in there just to get some penetrating oil in there. Such, like this. And we'll undo these here just a little bit. And we'll do the same down here as well. This is somewhat of an extra measure, but it's a good one to take just to ensure the longevity of those screws. Let that work its way in there. And we'll go back and we'll tighten these up again gently. You don't want to over tighten these, but they should be snug. But if you over tighten them, then you're going to run into problems with cracks and stuff in your side plate rings and all that. And, this reel kind of follows the Senator model when it comes to those rings, right? It's got inner rings and outer rings. And the reason why this stuff corrodes quite easily is because it's actually brass, and it's plated with the chrome, plating. But it's brass underneath, and Penn kind of did away with that at a certain point, and they shifted everything over to stainless steel, which was really helpful for that because it doesn't absorb those kinds of issues with salt water. Okay. But, you know, for these older classics, you you have these nice shiny plates here. Okay, so now that we're done with all that cleaning and whatnot, we're going to go in with some blue grease here to the bushing or bearing, and also on the clicker tongue as well. Okay, and then we're also going to take some Penn Precision oil, appropriate for this reel, and we're going to dab it down into those threads there and protect those threads. And before we wrap up any more of this, we're just going to kind of gently go over these frame posts here with the 4-0 steel wool. Okay. And, you know, judging from the state of the reel, you know, I wouldn't say it really needs a lot of chrome polishing per se and stuff like that. It's actually quite shiny. It just has a little bit of pitting in there. Okay, but it's actually quite nice. Okay. So now we've got our spool here, and we kind of got a similar thing here. We've got a little bit of corrosion here. So this is all part of the cleaning, part of the process, right? You know, this is what happens when you have dirty reels, or, you know, reels that, you know, just need that kind of attention, that cleaning attention. It takes time. A lot of the time I'll do this stuff off camera, but I wanted to keep it on this time, just to kind of walk you through the process and show you, you know, some of the things that you can do to take care of your reel. And that's what this channel is about, and all my videos are about. It's about, you know, taking care of the reel and knowing how to service it yourself if you want. Got some light pitting here on the spool, so we'll take care of that here. And these reels are primarily designed to use wire lines. Ideally, they're not really designed to use monofilament. I mean, you can, but I do believe they make aluminum spools for these, if I remember correctly. It's been a while, but the aluminum spools are nice because they don't rust or corrode like these do. But this one's in pretty good shape. I mean, it's got a little bit of pit here and there, but it's not bad at all. Okay, so now we're done with that cleaning, and we're going to go in with the blue grease here on this end here, and as well as on this end here. Okay, we're going to pop that back into place like so. Okay, that's a good deal there. Now, for the business end of our reel here. So it's pretty clean in here, so that's a good sign. So we've got 4 bridge screws in these positions that have to come out. We're going to apply that penetrating lube, and we're going to let it do its magic there. I'm using CRC Power Lube for that. You can use WD-40. You can use Liquid Wrench products. They make some good products. I have a tendency to stick towards the Power Lube or WD-40 typically because it's somewhat affordable, it doesn't smell that bad, and it does the job ultimately. So, and they're both great for cleaning parts and, you know, loosening things up in a good way. So, okay. So you should have 2 partially threaded screws on the top, and there should be 2 fully threaded screws on the bottom. as such, like that. Okay. And we're going to hose those down as well while we do this. Okay. So just a note of caution, you want to be aware that you've got some pieces here when you're taking this apart. Okay, and you've got a dog there, and then you've got your drag stack, dog spring, and then you've got your eccentric jack that's got to come off here. And these parts look like they're in great shape. They're just dry, so that's fine. Okay, so we've got some cleaning work that we're going to do here for sure. I'll put these up here. I like to lay all these parts out so that you can kind of keep track of what's going on and you can see everything in its entirety. Okay, so clutch kit, main gear come off that way. Looks like we got a little bit of rust damage down here. And I'm having a hard time taking this hard spacer washer out. It'll come out eventually. Hopefully we don't break it in the process, but if we do, I've got more somewhere. But you got to get that hard spacer washer off. Okay, and then as part of the service here, okay, we want to service the bridge. All right, and the way that we do that is there's a stud in here, and you got to poke that stud out. I've sometimes been able to do it just with a pick tool. Sometimes I got to get something a little more severe in there, like a hole punch kind of thing. We kind of lucked out this time, and it came out partially. So we're going to take our needle nose pliers, and we're going to pull that out like so. Okay, and then we've got access to our main drive line shaft here. We're going to take that 4.0 steel wool. We're going to clean that up really well, like such. Okay, you want these surfaces to be nice and smooth. Also want to clean this out as well. Put a little bit of power lube in there, take the Q-tip. And I can see that there's a little bit of rust here. We're going to let this do its magic on there. No big deal, but just for good measure. All right, Penn Precision Blue Grease here on the shaft. You can use oil too, but I'm not a big fan of doing that here. I like to use the grease. Oil has a tendency to ooze out, and then it'll be more of a problem for you down the road. Has a tendency to get into your drag kit and make it slip more and stuff like that. So, okay, so that's nice there. We're going to pop our stud back in the hole, like so. Sometimes it's hard to get it started again. Should be able to gently place it back in with the needle nose. You just got to make sure this is nice and flush. You can run your finger across it, otherwise you'll never get the gear set back on. Okay, all right, so that took care of that. That's in good shape. Spacer washer, nice and clean. We're going to pop that back on there like such. Okay, now we've got our drag stack, our washers here. Looks like we've got brass washer. I wonder if this has, no, it looks like it doesn't. I was wondering if it had, yeah, it might actually have leather in here. We'll see here in a second. Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, so we got leather drag washer kit in here, old school. Okay. Nothing wrong with it other than the fact that it does degrade, of course, just like anything else. But you know, these look like they're in good shape though. I don't think we're gonna have to replace these. A lot of the time, you know, if they crack and stuff like that, then that means it's time to replace them. These don't look that bad at all. Main gear, this is in great shape. Nice and clean. I'm just gonna clean it off a little bit more here with the brass wire brush, but I don't think we're going to have to do a lot here. It's just dry, basically. I didn't ask my friend the last time his friend used the reel, but that's okay. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to pop this back on right now, like so, like that. Okay, and we're going to apply some blue grease here to these teeth, and you don't have to hit every single one, but you do want to get a fair amount of it on there. Just kind of work your way around there. With that, it'll work its way into all the teeth eventually. Okay. All right, so real quick, I wanted to point out these are drag washers for this reel, but they're the Carbon-Tex HT100 style washers. And, you know, the original leather washers are in here, which there's nothing wrong with. Okay, but if they, you know, show signs of cracking and stuff like that, well, then it is time to, you know, change them out. I didn't ask my friend if his friend intends to actually fish this reel or not, you know, but if he were, I would say, you know, these drags are okay for that. Okay, so in that case, we don't need to apply any Cal Star drag grease or anything to these washers. They're leather, they're not meant for that, so we're just going to put them back into place like so. Okay, we're just going to check our metal washers and make sure that they're okay. Put that back on like such, and we'll put next leather washer in. Keyed washer goes on top of that. Okay, and then this is actually a red washer. It probably was part of the original kit, or it's possible that a washer got damaged that was on top, you know, one of the original leather washers. Okay, but that's okay to put on there. It doesn't seem to have any problems. And then we've got our last metal washer and then tension washer. Okay, so that's all done there. We're gonna take a little bit of power lube here and clean off these parts real quick with the brass wire brush. So yeah, as you can see, there's cleaning steps involved in this, okay, but you know, it'll make all the difference, you know, when the reel's all back together and assembled. So but I like to keep these paper towels, of course, nearby, and the Q-tips and whatnot. I like to take the 4O steel wool to these kinds of pieces here and make sure that we clean off any residual grease that's there, like this, for instance. Just kind of scraping it off here gently, because you really need all these pieces to be smooth. Okay, that's all good there. No issues there. All right, and then we're just going to do a quick cleanup in here, basically. Clean the inside here of that inner ring, and we'll get around the bushing on this side. You know, you can see we've got some really old stuff in there, so we'll get all that out of there nice and clean. Okay, and while we're here, we're just going to kind of go over these rings here gently with that foro steel wool. Yeah, I really don't know if we got to do a lot of polishing though here. Sometimes I'll use some rubbing compound or some chrome polish. This reel doesn't really need a lot of that. It's got a lot of sparkle left in it. So we probably don't need to sweat that too much, but we do want to break loose any of this corrosion, any of this turquoise that we're seeing here. Try to, lighten that up a little bit. Do it on this side as well. And there's only so far you're going to go with that stuff. It is what it is. Once that damage is done, you're not really going to change it, not without changing parts, which I've done before, but parts for these are not easy to come by. You'd basically be looking at another parts reel, a donor reel, if you will, for those parts, those rings and whatnot. And that can be perhaps more money than it's worth, just depending on what the reel is worth to you. So those are things to consider and think about. Okay, so now we're ready to get some of these pieces back together here. We can start with these two springs, pinion gear yoke springs that go in there. Okay, and then we're also going to take our blue grease here to our bushing on this side. And we're going to put a ample amount of that in there. And then we're also going to go over the eccentric rollers here as well with some of that, because that'll be necessary. And also, for good measure with this reel, I want to put just a little drop of oil here on those rollers, just because they're kind of heavy duty, and they'll benefit from having a little bit of lube in there, per se. Probably put a little bit more on there. That'll kind of work its way in there. Okay. All right, then we've got our pinion yoke, some blue grease here on both sides. All right, and then you've also got your pinion gear, which you need to apply some grease to. And there's plenty of other products out there that you can use for these applications. I recommend using these. The Penn products are great. They're affordable compared to a lot of the other stuff out there. But some people, they want to stick to certain things. This is what I stick with. It works. It's reliable. Okay, so we've got that assembly like that. We're going to place that back in position just like that. Then we've got our eccentric jack, and we're going to apply some blue grease here to this right now on both sides here, just to help it along. And you guys set that in position like so. Okay. Now we're ready to put our bridge assembly, main gear, and clutch kit back in. Okay, and this is a little tricky, but basically you got to push down on this part of the reel of this whole assembly here. And it's not too bad, I think, with this reel, if I recall. But you got to do a little song and a dance here where you snap it back into place like this. But don't forget, you've got a dog ratchet here that you got to put back into position. And that's got to go here. You got to line it up with that hole. And then you've got a spring, a dog spring, and that goes in the slot in the middle here in between. And you're going to have to set that spring as such. And take a fully threaded screw here from underneath to get it through there so that you can set your spring. Just be careful when you're doing this because you don't want any of these parts to go flying away on you. And then roll your bridge back around like so. And once you hear that click, that's usually a good sign. You see the screw already fell out on me here. But you should be able to turn this screw, give it a couple of turns, get some thread started in there. Don't tighten it. Okay, just get it started. Okay, and then you want to test this and make sure that it's working right. All right, and I managed to put the dog spring in not quite in the right position, so it should look like this. Okay, and it's pressing down on that dog. Okay, so now we'll go back again. Screw, fully threaded screw on the bottom. It goes from underneath, and you're going to roll that bridge assembly over like such. Dog springs can be tricky to work with, and they only really work one way usually, so you got to get that right. Now at this point, I like to test and make sure that it's working. You put it in the mode there, and you can see the mechanics of it. It's working just right. Okay. So before we button this up, we're just going to do a little bit more blue grease here on the top of the eccentric. And we're just going to gently clean that up. Pretty nice and shiny. And we're going to go back over on top here. And of course, before we get ahead of ourselves, we got to put these screws back in. Sometimes it's easy to overlook stuff, so just take your time. And in this case here, sometimes you gotta fudge that bridge around a little bit there just to get it right. There we go. Spin that up like that, and spin this one up as well. Don't over tighten these, okay? You'll crack your side plate, and then you'll wish that you didn't do it. A lot of these parts are somewhat obsolete, I'd say. You know, these reels are not in production anymore for sure, so you want to bear those things in mind. But just gently snug them, give them like a quarter turn at the max. Okay. All right, and that's all you need to do there. And go back like this. We've already oiled up those holes there. We've got all of our screws soaking in some penetrating oil. So we're going to get these threads started here one by one. And we'll just get them up to the plate just to kind of keep everything in place. But yeah, I'd say normally if this was just a regular normal, service, we wouldn't be, getting involved in quite so much of the cleaning, but that is what happens with these older pens, especially that have, been through the salt and all the elements of the ocean and stuff like that. They take a beating, and but they were designed to last a long time. And even in this reel's case, it can last a lifetime in its current state if it's cared for properly. So, okay, we're going to snug these up. Now all these threads will be nice and oiled and lubed, and protect those threads. Got to throw this latch back to get this one in here. And then we'll go down here at the bottom, and we'll throw those screws in there. And then this kind of turns into like a north, south, east, west kind of game that I like to do. Or just kind of tighten up here, go down below, and get that one kind of snug, and then come over here, go over here, just kind of get the balance right with the frame this way, essentially. You know, and these, you don't want to over tighten these either, because you can crack a ring that way. I'll just double check them all here real quick, just to make sure they're okay. I think they are. So, okay. So we got our collar here. It's got a little bit of corrosion on here. You don't want to get that steel wool caught in your thumb. And we'll clean out the inside here a little bit too. I can see it's got a little roughness in it here. And we'll pop that back in. Got our star wheel. And we're going to thread that on real nicely like so. You want to make sure that you tighten this down enough here so that you can actually get your handle back into position here. And also, before we do that, we're going to apply a little bead of oil here on that torpedo handle. Loosen that up a little bit. Yeah, it should move that easily. If it doesn't, well then it needs some love. And we got handle nut. Go back on like that. And we're going to give that a couple of turns gently. And you don't want to over tighten this either, but you got to line up that notch right there. We're going to do a bead of oil here for our handle nut screw. It's really important that you do that oil because you don't want that head to break off, and then you got to drill it out. I've had to do it before. It's not the funnest thing in the world. Okay. So we're going to take our paper towel here, clean it off here real quick. And we're going to try it out. So, okay, so that's in that mode there, in the direct drive mode. Okay, this is in the normal mode where your clutch is engaged. Okay, let's try the clicker out first, make sure that's working. Yep, clicker is good. Okay, you want to make sure that there's a little bit of play in your spool, but not too much. That's too much. That's still too much. That's probably about right. Just want a little tap like that. Okay, we'll go to free spool mode and we'll turn that reel. You can see it's spinning real smoothly there now, so that's good. Okay, and then I think we were already in direct drive mode. Yeah, so that just applies power directly to your main gear to save your clutch. Okay, if you're fighting a big fish, you know, that's what the purpose of that is for. Okay, and then it's a little hard to do it on these reels, but we'll tighten up the clutch here a little bit. Drag stack. And those leather washers, you know, they're holding pretty good, you know, for considering how old they are. So, yep, no problems there. Back off the drag when you're not using the reel. That'll preserve the life of that clutch kit. So, there you have it. That is the Penn number 49 Super Mariner deep sea fishing reel, all serviced and ready to go. And thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe and hit the notification button. That way it'll give you all the updates as to when there are new videos being posted. And I do intend to have quite a few more coming out shortly. So make sure you stay tuned for those, and we'll see you next time.